So, how did you become interested in computer science?
Sure. Hi. Thanks for having me. How did I become interested? It's funny, I never was interested. I sort of fought it when I was, so to, first of all, to let you all know, I'm not an engineer and I don't code on a daily basis, regular basis. It's not what I do. I work my role is as a product owner, and I work for a company called Liquibase. And what we do is we have a tool that basically automates and manages database schemas. And so it's a tool, what my end user is are developers. So I work a lot with developers, but I want to be very clear, I'm not a developer myself. So when I say like, how did I get interested in computer science? I actually never was. And I would still say in a kind of strange way, I'm still not. Like it was never sort of my driving inspiration for understanding and learning things. I sort of grew up having computers all alongside me. I had my first computer when I was 7 years old. And I can tell you, I am 47. So I've had a computer alongside me for 40 years. And it's always been sort of that tool that allowed me to do all the other things that I needed to be able to do. So when I was in school, I did my school projects on it. When I, was in college, brought the computer came along with me and went out to the working world and was working actually in like nonprofit advocacy work. So doing kind of more activism stuff. And through that, people were like, oh, you know how to use computers. Can you help us build, in my case, it was build a database. That was sort of my first project out of college where I was not hired as an engineer. That wasn't what I was doing. But since I'd always sort of learned the skills alongside everything else I did, I knew how to do it. And so it just sort of came along. But I fought this career for a very long time. I did not start in technology. I did not want to go into technology. I didn't want to be involved. Obviously, I think Anna, I went to a science technology high school, similar, I think, to what the program you all are involved in. And when I was there, I did not want to take computer science at all. So that's probably not the answer you're looking for, but I wanted to study humanities. I studied writing, I studied theater. When I went into college, I studied political theory and like history. And I think that actually has made me, in a way, understand technology from a different perspective and a little different angle.
So, if you could go back in time and give your high school self advice, what would you tell them?
I love that question. I would tell my high school self so many things. The first one I would definitely say is don't be afraid to fail. It doesn't matter. Like failing is, yeah, I even tell myself this now. When I was in high school, there was so much pressure. And I'm hoping maybe this has changed for some of you all, but there was just so much pressure to be so smart and be so perfect and to always get A's and to always, that was the sign of being the best. And as a result, I didn't try a lot of things that were hard. And computer science was hard. It was difficult. And I didn't want to be inferior. I didn't want to be seen as dumb. I didn't want to be seen as, in particular, the only girl, who was trying something and then I failed. And so that would sort of show people that, well, girls, I can't do this and girls are dumb or whatever. And I wish I could have known then what I know now, which is it's not true. And you fail all the time. Like I fail multiple times at work every day and you just get back, like that's how you learn. Um, so yeah, I really wish I'd known that back then, because I do think I probably would have taken a slightly different career path and I would have potentially been an engineer right now. That's might be talking to you about a little slightly different subject. Yeah. That and like don't take your grades so seriously. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that either here. Like I worked so hard to get such good grades, and it did. It helped me get into college, and that was great. And college was great, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, like now being where I am in my career and knowing what I know, like when I look back, the things I remember about high school were things about, things that really matter to me now. I can guarantee you none of them were my A's. none of them, I don't remember any of that part of it. The things that mattered were, the projects I worked on, the friends that I made, um, that I should have focused more time on.
What advice do you have for us as we consider our education
Probably
and
not
possible
that part I just said about don't worry about your grades. I shouldn't say that part. Sorry, Anna, what was the second part of the question?
and possible career goals or paths?
Oh goodness. What advice would I have? I think, yeah, like what I just said is like try some things that are hard. Try some things that you're not sure that you'll like. Like that's the whole thing. I think when I was in high school, in particular, I was very driven to like try to find the one thing. It's like, oh, this is who I am, and this is like what I do, as opposed to trying all sorts of things and just, yeah, trying them out for a little bit. Like you don't get to do that as much as an adult because we have to do things like pay our mortgage and have these careers. And I think taking advantage of that more when you're younger and testing it out is like, hey, if we're talking about coding here, it's like, go try some front end coding. Okay. Maybe you want to do databases. Maybe you want to do infrastructure. Maybe you don't want to do, maybe you want to do not even coding. Maybe you want to do robotics, or you want to do adaptive technologies, or whatever. I think I would say think about the kind of problems that you want to solve in the world and the people that you want to help, and then focus on what you would need to do in order to do that. So it's like if you want to, help stop the war, or you want to help feed more people and get more people to have food that they need, or to help get vaccinations where they need to, or whatever, start to think, okay, that's the problem I want to solve, and what kind of career would I need in order to get there. um, the other one is reach out to adults who are doing the thing that interests you, and just talk to us, like see if you can come along for, a day at work, or a book you recommend, or a blog to read, or a Twitter feed, or whatever. I'm old, so I'm not really on the Instagram very much, or whatever else y'all are reading these days. But I find like if I just, yeah, like if that's how I learn now, is I reach out to people who are doing the thing that I want to learn more about, and I just go directly to them like, hey, help me understand this better. In terms of planning your career, I'm also not a really awesome career planner, because I sort of followed an odd path in that I've had several careers. So maybe that's my career advice to you all: is you may not just have one, and you most likely won't just have one. Some people, and like the way I was raised and my parents were raised, or whatever, is you go to college, you study the thing, and then you have a career on that thing, or you go to grad school and get your whatever, and then you do that, and you do that for years, and then you retire and you're done. And I think things have changed a lot. I don't think that's how a lot of us have careers anymore. It's more about looking at, again, the problems you want to solve, the kinds of people you want to work with. Like, don't underestimate the importance of the kind of people that you want to work with. So when you look at different fields and companies and programs or whatever, ask around and talk to those people and find out, who are they? Do they have the kind of values that you have? Um, are you able to dress down for work every day? Like things that you might not think are like, oh, my happiness is dependent on what I do for a living. It's, well, that's kind of part of it, but your happiness is also dependent on your day-to-day existence. Like I love working from home. I'm one of those lucky people. It's one of the reasons I love tech, and I will always plug it and say, hey, women, go learn to code and go learn to do this, because you have so much job flexibility, at least now. Like even before COVID, I've worked from home for 15 years. So I would say, as you look at your career, also think about the kind of life that you want to have. Do you want to go into an office every day? Do you want to be in a big city? Do you want to work at a large company? Do you want to work at a small company? Do you want to have regular hours or not have regular hours? Like some of these are questions that I think come into play. And the nice thing with tech is that no matter what your answers are to those, you can find a place to be. Because I think sort of my last rambling point here is that when I was your age, there were like software companies and then everything else. And that's not the case now. Like every single company, we have this saying, where I work, and a lot of people where, in the field I'm in, we say, is every company is a software company. You all don't even probably remember, but back in the day, we had banks, and banks were not, where's my phone? Banks were not this. This is my bank now. That's my dog. Um, this is this is my bank. This is my everything. And it's like, so every company, like, I can't think of a single company I interact with that doesn't have a tech component. So you now have the luxury of thinking, okay, yeah, I want to do tech. I think I want to do coding, or I want to do engineering or whatever, but who do I want to do it with, and on behalf of what? So there's banking, there's government, there's environmental stuff, there's everything literally. I'm sure there's an exception and someone will raise it to me, but I can't think of something off the top of my head right now that doesn't involve tech. Like, I just adopted another dog and worked through an adoption agency, a rescue group that they have a website, they have a directory, there are people who work on that. So I think that would also be my sort of advice, is think outside of just sort of the day-to-day function of what you want to do, but plan around the kind of problems you want to solve, and the person you want to be, and the people you want to be around.
What did you major in college?
Another rocky question for me. My college didn't have majors. How about that? I went to an alternative college, and so we technically didn't have majors. We had what we called concentrations, and so we got to put together and design our own program of studies. I went to a small college in Western Massachusetts called Hampshire College, and I studied, for the most part, political theory, American studies, like U.S. history, and like legal theory, civil rights stuff. I thought I wanted to be, it's kind of a funny story. I thought I wanted to be a voting rights attorney, which would be relevant right now. And my second to last year of college, I went to go take my LSAT, the law school entrance exam, and I got sick. Like, I went in to take the test, and I literally like had to leave. I had to cancel my scores and leave because I got sick. Anxiety, nerves, I don't know, it didn't work out. But as a result, that's kind of what ended up tripping me into this whole career, is because I didn't know what to do. Like, for the first time in my life, I didn't really know what my next step was. And so I, out of college, just took a job working at a nonprofit, because, again, going back to like, what kind of problems did I want to solve? I always knew I wanted to work on something that would, help make a difference and help make, in this case, like, our country a better place, and I knew that I didn't want to work in a big office, and I didn't want to work in I didn't want to have to dress up for work every day and like be all formal. That's just not who I am. So I guess the question was what I studied. Then I went to, so I did a career in the nonprofit world, and then I thought, okay, I want to be a teacher, of all things. So I actually have a master's in teaching, and I taught 8th grade for about 3 years in Washington, D.C. And I bring that up because I do think it actually has helped me a lot in my career in technology, because understanding sort of theories of learning and how people learn and consume information is very, very applicable to designing systems, and tools that are usable. And also, creating technology. Obviously, it's not just about coding. It's about understanding the problem and understanding what a good usable solution would look like. Like, I have a little joke, you guys have probably heard, if a tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear it? You may have heard that phrase, but we'll say, if an engineer builds, sorry, that's my dog. If an engineer builds software and nobody uses it, does it matter? So it's like understanding what the tool is actually supposed to do and solve, and then helping people build it so it does that. I think my teaching degree actually helped a little bit with that. So that's the other fun thing too, is like, going back to the advice question, study what you want to study. Like, seriously, like, if it excites you and it's enjoyable and it helps answer questions for you at that time in your life, just study it. Don't worry about, how is this going to impact my career 10 years from now? Am I reading the right book right now? Am I majoring in the right thing? Am I, like, just go, I don't want to say like go where your passion is, because that sounds so cheesy, but go where your curiosity is, because I have big faith in curiosity. I have big faith where, and even if other people are telling you those things aren't related, if they're saying, oh, you want to study history and you want to study coding, well, those things aren't related, and you're sure that they are, and you're sure somehow deep down we are somewhere. Oh, sorry, you're recording this and my dogs are going nuts. Hey, guys. Sorry, there's another dog across the street. Anyway, go for it. Study those things that are different, because you never know. You never know what's going to end up overlapping. There's sort of a couple theories of innovation, and one of them is that innovation is some of the biggest innovations in our lifetimes and other lifetimes is when two seemingly different things, somebody comes along and relates them and connects them in a way that no one ever saw. And that's one of the things I think we as women, in particular, as girls and women, see that in ways that other people who have different gender identities don't, you know?
Do you have any teachers or mentors that inspired you?
Yes, actually. I have one mentor. She was my mentor for a long time. When I first started to work in nonprofits and I got involved in databases, managing systems of, activists and donors and things like that, I met this woman named Gina Vanderloop, and she was working at a database company that a lot of nonprofits use, and she ended up leaving it and starting her own. And that was in, oh my gosh, I don't even know when that was. That would have been like in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I just always stayed in touch with her and always worked alongside of her. And at one point, this is about 10 years ago, I think, went and worked for her with her company. And it's a funny small world, because I worked for her company for about 5 years and then I left. And I've had about 2 or 3 jobs since then. Her company, which is called Rose Solutions, they are in the process of migrating it's a database. They're in the process of migrating from an Oracle system up into Amazon Web Services and doing some of that stuff. And they're using this contractor, and this contractor uses a tool called Liquibase, which is the tool I am now the product owner on. So it's very funny because she texted me, even though we don't see each other or really talk much anymore. And she's just like, hey, guess what? So having mentors is a really great thing. I think it's hard because I'm constantly looking for someone who can sort of guide me at where I am right now. But I also often think I'm in places where there aren't a lot of people doing or thinking about, or I don't know, existing the way that I need to at the time. So while mentors, I definitely go get them and use them and believe in them and all that good stuff. At the same time, don't be afraid to let one go when it's time. And also don't be afraid to be your own mentor, like, or have a friend who's a coach, like you can coach each other. It's like different people have different sets of skills, and it's like, okay, I might be able to help you with one thing and then you can help me back. So I'm not a real huge believer in a very strict, mentor mentee relationship. I like the idea of people coaching each other and also becoming my own mentor. Like, what do I need to learn? What am I missing? Who can I go talk to and get all of these things? Because I don't think there is necessarily one person, out there who has all of the guidance for me.
I think you already kind of covered this question, but so like, what challenges did you encounter in your like path to where you are like now in your job?
Sure. Gosh, there's a lot. And now in my job, there's so many challenges. I think one of our biggest challenges, and everyone will have this, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have this challenge in tech right now, is sort of twofold. One is scaling. You guys probably hear this phrase all the time. It just has to do with being able to replicate and cover more ground, basically making it, I don't want to just say bigger, but if you have, say, a system that's, little system running, and then you're like, okay, that covers a quantity of 10 or whatever, say 10 people can use it. I now need to have it designed so 1 million people can use it. And the way you have to like kind of architect that to scale it is difficult. In particular, people expect a lot more, what we sometimes call elasticity or ephemeral nature, where we're expecting things to be there when we want them and then not want and have them go away when we don't. So that also has to do with scaling, because as you get into tech resources and looking at the actual, I say machines in air quotes, because I'm sure almost everything you all do is not on your own computer. You're doing things in the cloud. And figuring out like, okay, I'm going to go get what I need, use it, scale it in the cloud, and then bring it back down. So I'm not paying for it when I don't need it, and I'm not wasting resources. So that's definitely a challenge. Challenge with that, of course, also comes just scaling not just the technical resources, but scaling sort of the people who are using these things now. So I mentioned earlier, like every company is a tech company now. That means that every employee is a tech user, and it didn't used to be like that. So you constantly have different, what we call personas, different types of people coming in. You know, it used to be, well, the system was we only had to develop it for someone who had knowledge of, say, Java, you know, or we only had to do this for .NET developers or whatever. And it's like, oh no, now you have to expand it to include these languages, and then you have to expand it to include people who are infrastructure people, and then, oh no, now the developers are learning to do database schemas, so you've got to make it work with this. So that whole scaling is not sort of just the technical infrastructure, it's also the people. So that's challenging. And with that comes with just keeping up. Things move so fast now. Like it used to be, seriously, even though like maybe a little bit of like one or two languages, I wish I still had some in the background, these like huge computer manuals. Y'all can ask your parents to go see them. They're these like big books on how to learn like, you know, SQL and how to learn C++, and you open it up and you just go through it and you learn. And now things move so quickly. Like it's just so difficult to keep up on everything, and no single person can understand it. So you really have to, we really have to rely on each other and the connections between each other. Like it's very similar to the system itself, where the system doesn't, the only way the system makes sense is by connecting itself to lots of little things like the internet, right? The internet is not one computer. You know, I used to think back when I was a kid that I had dial-up, you might have heard of these things, where the phone would like call into the internet. And I used to think it was literally calling a machine and all of that information was on that machine, which of course is not true. The internet is an, you know, almost infinite series of nodes that are all connected. And so that model of sort of communication is how understanding these systems is now, both in terms of the tech and the people. So you can get pretty crazy trying to understand everything. And I will often have to just pause and back myself out a little and just be like, you know what? Some things I'm going to know, like a glossary, you know, I'm just going to know enough that I can talk about it. And then some things I'll know deep enough that I can go actually do it. But there's no way that any one person can know all of this stuff. And it's just, when I read this one fact, I'm probably not citing it correctly, but when you look at data, I think it was 2000, and it was either 2001 or 2005. I should have looked this up, but somewhere around then, the world had twice as much data that year as it had all of time before it. And then it has doubled every year since. So if you all are feeling like things are overwhelming, you know, and there's just too much out there and it's moving too fast, you're right, it is. So managing that sort of amount of information, the anxiety that comes with it, the need to sort of control it and direct it is a constant struggle. And it's something I don't, you know, that condition's not going to change. What's going to change, I think, is how we manage it, but it's only going to get, I don't say worse because it's not a punishment or anything, but yeah. So those are the hard things. And people, don't forget people. People are always the hardest part of any job. You know, machines are fun. They do what you ask them to do, you know, and they're very, very predictable. People, no matter what job you go into, people will be the hardest thing. The hardest part of any job will always be people, and the best part.
So you like do you like work with databases, right?
Yes, yeah,
So do you
sort of, indirectly,
like
yes.
coding languages?
Do I know? I do. I used to use SQL quite a bit, obviously, and I still understand it. I don't actively code in anything now, but I do read a lot of code. And so what I've found is understanding, because I back way back in the day, I learned BASIC, I learned Pascal, I learned a little Fortran, I learned SQL, I learned, gosh, what else? I sort of stopped because then I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I started to learn, it's not a language, but more operating systems. So I started to learn a little Linux, just because I loved the idea of, always loved open source, and I loved the idea of not having to rely on these big companies, and the idea of people coming together to make software for the sake of making software, not making money, and helping solve problems. So I learned a little bit of sort of that kind of operating systems, Linux, not making Linux, but using Linux. And I know a little Java. So the main thing is I know kind of like a little R, if you've ever done R, and a little Python, so data science stuff a little bit. The main thing I found that helped with learning languages as a non-coder, as someone who's not expected to deliver executable code on like a day-to-day basis, is that I can go ahead and read code that developers have created and understand what it's trying to do, or go find things, and find where I think there might be a problem in the code. I may not be able to solve it, but I can go and say, hey, I think that they're talking about this. Or when engineers come to me, or if like an end user says, hey, there's a bug here, I can go and sort of look and see, okay, no, that is a bug. No, that's a usage error. But the main thing with learning languages was, for me, not learning the language, it was learning the logic and sort of the algorithms, because those don't really change. I mean, they do, but they don't, there's things like, looping and recursion and group by, or select all, include, exclude, like, filters, stack ranking. These are like concepts that no matter what language you're using, those are going to be concepts that are sort of semi-universal. And they're really handy because you can cut right into a conversation with almost any developer and ask about certain things, and certain concepts.
Do you know of any good sites to learn coding?
Oh gosh, everywhere. I use Data Camp, but that's just because I'm learning mostly data related. And it's a paid resource. It just depends on what you're trying to learn. But it is, I would start with, I know it sounds silly, start with YouTube. Like if there's something you try to learn, it's on YouTube. It really is. I also tend to read a lot of blog posts. So there's a lot of engineers writing things on Medium. There's a lot of, obviously, people writing things on, you do have to take it with a grain of salt sometimes when you get into sort of Stack Overflow, which I'm sure you all have. If you're coding, if you haven't looked at Stack Overflow, it's a great resource. Just be forewarned, people can be rude. Like, just don't take it personally, which is like the hardest thing to do sometimes, because people can just be rude when you ask a question, and they can kind of talk down to you. And I don't like that part. I like to sort of counter it by being super friendly and nice out there. But seriously, anything you want to learn to code, there's, if you're doing cloud stuff, there's Cloud Guru. Google has free classes. AWS, Amazon Web Services has free classes. Salesforce has free classes. Whatever software it is that you're looking to learn, or whatever language, there tends to be free resources out there. I know it sounds really like unresearched, but just start with Google and start with YouTube and figure, what do you want to learn? And the tutorials are out there. They're all pretty self-driven at this point. I still sometimes, believe it or not, use books, but I understand that that's not, typically how things work these days. But I can't think of anything like right now. I'm trying to learn Spring Boot. If you guys haven't used Spring Boot to deliver applications, that's sort of one of the things I'm starting to look at. And it's all free, open source, and online, and I can learn all of it just for free. That's also what's so amazing is, while you guys have while you will have a little flexibility, and you have, I don't want to say time, because I know high school you have no time, but you don't have a mortgage yet, you don't have to pay for kids or whatever yet. Like, yeah, go just learn whatever's interesting. And other little bit of advice, you're probably doing this, I hope, build a portfolio. So if you work on something and you end up creating something, regardless of what it is, keep track of it and have a portfolio, have an online portfolio, have a GitHub repo. If you don't know what that is, and I'm sure you do, I'm sure I'm stating the obvious to you all. Yeah, have a GitHub repo. That's something we never had back in the day. And your portfolio can be your GitHub repo, all that. Like, yeah, put that stuff in there and keep track of it. No matter how I don't want to say bad. You think it is, because none of it's bad. It's all just experimenting. It's all just playing and having fun.
What do you value most about like knowing knowing coding languages or knowing how to use them?
I think being able to insert myself into almost any company, to be honest. It's like there's the role that I play is so sort of universal at any place that's making software, and any place, like I said earlier, is most companies are making software right now. So it's very, I feel very, very fortunate to have landed, especially with this economy and everything going on in the world right now, to have landed in a place that makes my skills needed by people. They'll pay me money to do it, which is nice. But even better is I've been able to meet people. I think this is really it. When I think about it, I've been able to meet people all over the world. Like I said, I've worked remotely forever. And at the last company I worked for, my team was in Spain, France, and England mostly. There were some, oh my gosh, they were everywhere. It was one in Australia. So you just got to meet all these people. And similarly, over there at that company, I worked with some people from Ukraine and currently have colleagues in Ukraine. And so it's not really a benefit of saying I understand like, oh, because I can look at Java or I can look at whatever code, I got to know them. Not really, but yes, really. It's a commonality that brings people together from different cultures, and knowing them, it's just put a different perspective on a lot of things in the world. So I think it's sort of I don't know, an untapped little secret is if you start to learn technology and learn to code, you end up meeting some of the coolest people in the world, and literally all over the world. It will take you places.
What coding language would you recommend to use to create a website?
Their website? Oh, you got to ask me these kind of technical questions. I don't know. I don't know what anyone's using now. I know a lot of people are using React to do the graphics part of it, but I don't. It's so funny. I don't do web development. I'm like, sorry. The stuff I work on is more databases and infrastructure. So I know people do CSS. I know people use React. I know people use is it Django? Is that one of them? Am I even naming things correctly now? Drupal used to be a thing. Is it still a thing? Um, yeah, a lot of people I know using low code stuff too that I am just not aware of. Sorry. I can tell you the hot language it seems right now for a lot of projects is Golang. A lot of projects that I work on where I'm at, Golang seems to be a hip language these days. And if you want to go into any automation, look into, yeah, that, YAML, Groovy. If you're looking at data, obviously make sure that you understand JSON formats. That seems to be a big deal these days. And Python.
If anyone has any questions, you can write them to me in the chat. You can also unmute if you would prefer to do that.
Are you all building websites? Is that current activity?
I'm working on building a website for to put the recordings on to the website, and then have like a schedule and like different information about different opportunities for coding.
What are you using? What language are you using?
Trying to use HTML and CSS, but yeah. I don't think that's I think there's probably better ones that I could use to make it look a little better.
I know I was looking at One point I was looking was for blog stuff though. You ever, I mean, it's not a language, but I use WordPress. Are you allowed to use things like that?
I don't know. I was just what I was using it through Replit.
Oh, I don't know that. Yeah. WordPress is a great resource if y'all don't know WordPress. They have like a lot of free templates out there.
If no one else has any questions, we can end the meeting here. So, all right. Thank you for
Well,
coming.
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And if people have questions afterwards or whatever, Anna's got my email, so feel free to send them my way.
All right. Bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye.